Now, Donald Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, is enraged over a report where it said that Donald Trump might accept North Korea as a nuclear power. Now, John Bolton, of course, was dispatched to Mongolia during the meeting where Donald Trump had met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-Un. Now, weirdly enough, the person who went with Donald Trump was not his national security advisor. It was Tucker Carlson. Well, now that's weird. And Tucker Carlson later on, of course, in a phone call, kind of defended the North Korean regime, saying that, hey, man, look, sometimes, and I'm not defending what they're doing, but sometimes you just have to kill people as a leader. All right, man, look, that's a super strange defense. I wouldn't go in that direction. But he's trying to basically, and I can't believe I'm I'm not really defending Tucker Carlson. I'm just trying to explain where he's coming from. He doesn't want a war with North Korea, which would be an absolute disaster. And at least I can agree with Tucker Carlson on that one, right? Then again, oddly enough, that's weird because why would you bring Tucker Carlson with you to North Korea? Then again, weirder things have happened. Remember Dennis Rodman. So now let me explain. The Times had reported that the concept of this deal of allowing North Korea to stay a nuclear power would basically amount to a nuclear freeze, one that enshrines the status quo and accepts the North Korea as a nuclear power, which means they keep their nuclear arsenal, but they don't expand on it. They don't add any new missiles. They don't do anything else. They basically keep what they have. Now, Trump administration officials, and look, there's two different camps of Trump administration officials at this point. There are those who want to avoid a war with North Korea and Iran, and then there are others who desperately want to jump into these disastrous regime-change wars. And then, of course, that part is John Bolton, Mike Pompeo. Now, those Trump administration officials who are against war hope the plan, which falls short of the president's promise to solve the North Korea problem, was seen as a foundation for a new round of negotiations, in which American negotiators would seek to expand on Mr. Kim's offer in Hanoi to give up the country's main nuclear fuel production site at Yongbyon, in return for the most onerous sanctions against the country being lifted. So it's sort of similar to what we had with the Iran deal, in a way, except that, of course, Iran is not a nuclear state, whereas North Korea is a nuclear state. Now, the approach could stop that arsenal from growing, the New York Times reports. It would not, at least in the near future, dismantle any existing weapons, variously estimated at 20 to 60, nor would it limit the North's missile capabilities. So look, it's not a perfect plan, obviously, but it's something, and it's something that I would be okay with in the meantime. I mean, look, think about it, the perspective here from North Korea, right? So now, the reason that North Korea is nuclear armed is kind of to prevent the United States from invading. I mean, the United States has never invaded a nuclear armed country for good reason. Now, in non-nuclear armed countries, well, that's a different story. Iraq, for example, had no nuclear weapons. But more importantly, a better example is Libya. Now, Libya actually did have nuclear weapons or nuclear capability. Gaddafi basically was negotiated with and had given up his nuclear ambitions, right? So that left the country open. Oh, and look, years later, Gaddafi is dead on the street with stuff being rammed up his butt. So that's not good. North Korea looks at that and says, I don't want that to be me. Kim Jong-Un says, no, unbelievable. Not going to do that. So any deal that makes me get rid of my nuclear weapons is unworkable. Yeah, I know, enough of those puns. Terrible, terrible. But look, those two countries, as I said, Iraq and Libya and many others that are non-nuclear armed, they have been messed with, invaded by the United States. So, look, North Korea does not want that to happen, obviously. And so, well, they also don't want the sanctions on them. So what do? Apparently, they try to negotiate with Donald Trump who is pretty much the only one that has signaled, well, okay, maybe. Now, of course, there's a weird little love thing going on between Kim Jong-Un and Donald Trump. He writes him love letters and literally said, I've fallen in love with Kim Jong-un. I don't like that part. That's not a good thing. At the same time, you know what? As long as there's some sort of assurance that we're not going to launch a disastrous war into North Korea, which would, by the way, devastate South Korea as well as Japan, two of our allies in the region, we want to avoid that at all costs. At all costs. And look, if there is something here that we can do to at least prevent the North Korean regime from developing newer, more deadlier weapons, well, I guess that's something, right? It's not the elimination. And by the way, let's be honest, there's never going to be an elimination. That's not going to happen. That's an unrealistic goal. Or unrealistic goal. I know. So, anyway, that's the plan, right? At least according to the New York Times, according to Trump officials. Now, going back to John Bolton here. John Bolton was in Mongolia when this happened. He got sent off to Mongolia somewhere, right? And he come back, and he's like, well, wait a minute. I just read this New York Times article. There's nothing in there that said anything about this. In fact, here's his tweet. I read this New York Times story with curiosity. Neither the National Security Staff nor I have discussed or heard of any desire to settle for a nuclear freeze by the North Koreans. This was a reprehensible attempt by someone to box in the president. There should be consequences. You schmuck. For one, you know what? That would be no consequences because if somebody's boxing in the president to make sure that there is peace with North Korea, box away. I'm all about the box, right? Because, look, again, any war with North Korea would be an absolute unmitigated disaster. And so I don't want to be a part of that. We know John Bolton. We know Mike Pompeo. They do want war with North Korea. I think their eyes are really set on Iran. But look, either war will make him and his defense contractor buddies incredibly rich. Now, pointing that out, and how I don't want a war with either of those countries, that doesn't mean I like North Korea or Kim Jong-un or even Donald Trump. It's just, I just happen to hate John Bolton and Mike Pompeo even more. And more importantly, no war. No war. Now, of course, Bolton was hilariously dragged on social media for this, and I'm kind of all for it. I want to give you a couple of tweets here. To point out what's going on here. Kevin just said, you're not even there. But maybe Tucker Carlson and Ivanka will fill you in on the details if you say pretty please. I love John Bolton getting dragged. Rose Toth Kate says, weren't you banished to Mongolia? And he can stay there. Jimmy Madison says, Bolton wants to be in the room where it happens, yet he's been pushed aside by reality TV show host and failed retailer Ivanka Trump. Dick Holden says, how do you say irrelevant in Mongolia? That's great. And finally, Jeremy Newberger says, gotta hurt that Trump keeps cozying up with all these people you want to bomb. And look, that's the truth of it, right? Donald Trump, not a good person. And yes, he does cozy up with dictators. And yes, he has a love relationship. He's fallen in love with dictator Kim Jong-un. Kills his own people, runs concentration and death and work camps, all that stuff. At the same time, John Bolton, not a good guy. Even a worse guy, because he wants to bomb all those innocent people, as well as non-innocent people. And so I don't want to go in that direction. Look, the sooner we get the neocons out of Trump's ear, the better, right? And so what this story tells me is that while, Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un, he doesn't even want his national security guy there, meaning that there is a rift. And that's the important takeaway here. Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, they do not have as much sway over President Trump as I think a lot of people think that he does. And then again, he didn't even want to hire John Bolton at first because of his mustache. I couldn't stand his mustache. Oh, okay, well, nonetheless, he hired him, but is not listening to him. And again, that's a good thing, right? Donald Trump is disastrous enough as it is without being goaded into a war with Bolton and Pompeo. And so I'm weirdly left with this strange hope that Donald Trump can resist going to war thanks to people like Tucker Carlson and others. It's sort of a weird thing, and the fact that Donald Trump has already been against interventionist wars in the Middle East. I got this weird hope that he will try to stay out of these wars as long as he can and ignore Pompeo. And I hope, by the way, Bolton gets booted or resigns or something, so we can get this madman, this neocon, out of the White House and out of Donald Trump's ear. And that's the best I can hope for as long as Donald Trump continues to be president. And hopefully he can hold out until maybe we can get somebody else in there who is not interventionist and is not in favor of endless war. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.